It will be very nice to see your beautiful faces.
Sorry,
And
Yair, I'm sick. I'm Jag kan inte tända min kamera. Yeah.
it's fine. You don't need to explain. I invite whoever can to open the camera.
Okay.
Yes, I can see Rav Moshe David just joined.
Shalom, everyone. Shavua Tov. Good to see you.
Are you joining
Shalom.
for the whole shiur? It's important
Shabbat.
because maybe we'll be maybe we'll not. I don't know how much we'll agree on the content of the shiur, so it's good you're here to.
Ah, you always like bringing up our differences, Rav Yair.
No, no, no. I actually this time really in sincere meaning because we're looking on all the aspects of my focus was cleaning and hygiene and the different aspects, and there are very big debates about it in the halachic world, and it's one of the topics that actually, when I chose to teach about this a week, I was like, wow, this is one of the topics that I find lots of difficulties with personally. Like it's not easy for me. First of all, I don't like talking about it, and and uh, and uh, and I don't know where I stand toward the things, and so it's a challenge for me. I'm just sharing.
Okay.
How do
Well,
you feel about it, Moshe David?
um, I don't know exactly what you mean, so we can talk about it further once we get into the details. But I would say that everything that has to do with my daughters, I tell them, ask your mother, and then I get out of the questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
This is what I mean.
but
Why in any other aspect you wouldn't do that? There's something about this topic that is we
no, I'm not.
understand there's
No,
something.
no, I don't agree. I think you see, we already disagree.
Yeah, great.
But I think that it's more that I don't know the details of brushing my hair because I don't do that, for example. Or there is a difference. I'll give you a funny one, but we'll get into it maybe later. So I don't use a toothbrush on Shabbat, but my
Yes,
wife,
we'll come to that.
it's very important for our kids to brush their teeth, and she does. So then she can take the responsibility for that. Um, but in
I,
general, um, I think, yeah, we can get into it more. I just need to try to get my computer to work because I could only give me. You can start and I will
yes, I will.
join.
I will.
I actually wanted to also to bring something very interesting which happened to us. Of course, 5 minutes before Shabbat, there was very heavy rain and winds in Israel, which is wonderful. This is a really blessed year in terms of the rainfall all throughout. Um, and we ended up losing electricity just like 10 minutes before Shabbat entered. And then it just really and then when it came back, it's like we were in a very half of the lights were not working. And then the refrigerator I couldn't turn into the Shabbat mode because the electricity was not on. The water heater, the water kettle was on boiling mode. So it's really interesting. Like, okay, what do we do now? By the time the lights were back on, which is a question in itself, can you turn the lights back on? Can someone go and switch the main switch back on? We can discuss. So, but then everything was really messed up. But give me 2 minutes. I just want to connect my computer.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Good you're surrounded with so many Arabs. Yes, no, so the rules of Shabbos is going we won't talk about today. So let's start. I want to ask you. So we already like deep in the studies of Hilchot Shabbat. So when we come to questions of preparing the body, you've learned the different melachot and such. Which melachot are um, I hope you all already know the word melacha. Like the types of work, the 39 different category that are avot melacha that are forbidden. Which type of them, which one of them will be relevant to uh, questions of dealing with the body?
Well, maybe
What?
makeup. I don't know how it's officially called, but it's like you paint, you draw
Okay, so
something. So
paint,
this one is
right? Tzovea, right? To litzboa, right? That's the one important one. Yes.
Another one is smearing.
Smearing,
Yeah.
yes, right? To because all these things many times are in a something you smear. Yes.
Coloring as well, I guess.
Yes, coloring tzovea. Yes.
There's spritzing, so you press a bottle to spritz something.
Splitting, but splitting is not a melacha.
Okay.
I'm talking about one of the 39.
Also, in terms of hair, when you cannot brush your hair because you can end up losing it. And I have no idea how it's called in English, but it's like, like
Yeah. So the question not only but the question of gozer, like the cutting, because you have that.
no, more
Yeah,
like if you like push a little bit more, then you can lose the hair, and it's like pulling out.
exactly. You're cutting a hair. When
Exactly.
you take it out, it's connected to so the um, good. So I'm just saying that you need to think of these things not only on the. It's important when we go into the details that it's also connected to where the sources come from. Yeah, you have also others that are debated, and then we'll open and see. I don't know if all of them, but most of them. And of course, we won't be able to cover everything today, but we'll do as much as we can. Um, um,
I also wanted to say squeezing, so you cannot really like wash yourself, and especially the hair on
Squeeze,
Shabbat,
yes, yes. So all the
because you're
question,
squeezing. Yeah.
right, right. The question of squeezing is very relevant to all the things that are connected to water and to using other things to. So squeezing is definitely very relevant also in connection to the toothbrush that we mentioned before. There are um, quite a few elements, and I have a feeling that it will be something we'll say it will be make you uncomfortable, or like what really? How can like, or at least maybe it's I'm projecting to you to from my place that it makes me feel uncomfortable, right? Like so let's see, and don't if you have something that is difficult, don't shoot me. I'm only the messenger, so don't shoot the messenger. I'll bring the sources, and you'll decide how you do with them and how you deal, because it is complicated, and there is a reason for the beautiful thing that Moshe David says when he says, "Ask your mother." Remember that until the unraveling like a hair braid. We have also other one that's connected to bonnet, like a building that we will see in the Talmud. So a great answer. You can see how many of the things are not, none of the things that we talked about are connected to the origin, right? All the element, and this is also an important lesson, all the melachot that you just mentioned originally were connected to something else. But then, like, you use them in a different category because they are principle of works, and then suddenly they're relevant in something they never thought about. Because in the temple, if the avodot were connected to a thing they did in the temple, they're very different than the thing that they do here. But still, you make the connection. When we talk about tzovea, like coloring of the face, the original coloring was connected to coloring of wool to create clothes. So that's the source in the Mishnah but then suddenly you use the same belacha, the same type of work, also to questions about makeup. And the same about it was great the example that we asked about the pulling the hair out, that it's connected to cutting, that was also originally had a different focus in the Mishnah, because the Mishnah learns that the principle of work and of types of work that will be relevant to every place in our practice. And we'll see that even more. I will say next week that many times the rabbis will discuss why is something forbidden, because they won't know. It won't be a clear connection between the origin type of work and category and what we do. So sometimes they will agree it's not allowed and just won't agree which one it is. But sometimes they will also won't have an agreement about what is it allowed or not. And then the question, is it a melacha or not? Is it something that comes from these principle of works? That will be determining how they rule and how we also rule. And that's another reason why you need a rabbi. You need someone to talk to hear, to understand what the halacha is, and what do you follow, and you can't only rely on your wife to solve it. And sometimes, but not everyone has a wife to solve these questions.
I think, Rav Yair, the example that you just gave is connected to what we were saying, because the idea of minhag Yisrael, in other words, the rabbis are basing themselves on something that they know is prohibited in the home. How do they know it? Because their wife tells them, "Oh, you can't do that," because they were busy learning, and maybe they never knew if they, or didn't notice if their daughters were brushing their hair or their sisters were brushing their hair or not, or maybe they did notice. But the idea is, when I said before, ask your mother, it's not because I don't know what's written in Shulchan Aruch on it, but first of all, there are different minhagim, especially as my wife comes, her minhagim are from the Yemenite tradition,
Which
or
is
half
connected
Yemen,
mostly to Rambam.
and not mostly, in her case, completely Rambam,
Yeah.
because they are her family was very Dardaim, her very, very strict on the Maimonides, and not letting anything else into Yemen from Shulchan Aruch or from the Arizal, or etc. They didn't let anything in, so they were very strict on Maimonides. But then even within my wife's family, right? So her other side was from Leipzig, so. Right. So, but still, the question is, okay, that was something her own parents, my wife's parents, had to manage, in terms of what do you do. But it's a good example because my own father-in-law only had daughters. Right. So he's has the Yemenite tradition, but his wife has the Leipzig, right, has the Yekish tradition. So, and then where does that come down? So basically I tell my own daughters, ask your mother and let her try to deal with that. But the whole idea that you're saying here is that there's a large gap between the melacha and what we're talking about in general, but also what is it that we can say, what does Shabbat look like? What is allowed on Shabbat, etc., and what is not, and how does it connect to the basic framework of the melachot, which I think is a common theme throughout these shiurim.
Exactly. So now I'll go to the sources, because we don't have much time, and I have to finish exactly on time today. And I have, again, as always, lots of sources, and too many sources, and not enough time. So um, so I start with something quite simple. The questions of can everyone see? Good. So we go to a question of nails, which will be relevant also to other. Okay, with regard to one who removes his fingernails, with one another. By the way, the difference between the bold words and the regular, that the regular is explanation. It's not there originally. So only the bold is the wording of the Talmud and the Mishnah. Okay, so here I bring something from Talmud Shabbat 94b. That's where all the discussions about these topics. I bring the Mishnah, the Talmud. One remove the fingernails with one another. So using the fingernails to use the fingernails, or with his teeth. And the same is true to his hair, like removes hair with the hands, fingers. And the same is true with regard to his mustache. And the same is true with regard to his beard. Okay, so all these things when you remove with your fingernails, and the same in regard to a woman who braids her hair, and the same regard to apply to to one who applies blue eyeshadow, kachal, and the same the one who applies blush. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer deems them all as liable, and the rabbis prohibited due to a rabbinic decree. Okay, that's a very important distinguish. So these things are forbidden, but the question is the level of is it forbidden? Rabbi Eliezer says when Rabbi Eliezer deems him liable, it means it's a isur deoraita. We talked many times about it, and what's the difference between what is deoraita?
Torah.
Yes,
Yes.
Doraita means it's a prohibition from the Torah, which mean according to these are exactly according to Rabbi Eliezer, these are directly Isur Melacha. They are mamish, like exactly the forbidden things of the Melacha. And again, when we say with the Torah, it doesn't mean that it's written in the Torah. The Torah doesn't say a word about brushing your hair or putting the blue color. It's the rabbinic decision what is studied from the Torah and what is a rabbinic decree. So the rabbis prohibit to do it to a rabbinic decree. It's mishum shvut, which is like an important thing. It's the rabbinic decree of how Shabbat looks. Okay, mishum shvut. It's because of I would say it's a very important word in the halacha. It's because of the feeling of Shabbat, I would say. I don't know how to say it's more. It's not about doing the forbidden work, but it's a forbidden thing to the atmosphere of Shabbat that we want to create. But they say it. But it's a rabbinic decree, and so it's called the Rabbanan, and that has many consequences, because if it's not allowed from Doraita, then the level, if something is similar to it, or then it will be very careful. But if it's the rabbis, then it will be easier to permit something that is not clear. Is it this or not? It will be easier, because then it's what we call safek de rabbanan. It's a question about a rabbinic decree and not a question about a Torah decree. If it's a question about Torah decree, the question about Doraita, then we'll say it's forbidden. But if it's a question about the Rabbanan, then we will be more lenient. Okay, and now
Rav Yair,
yes,
yeah. Sorry for interrupting. Just because it's important that one of the reasons the Oraita, if one can ask, why is it important? We know we can't do it, so what does it matter? And the answer is that many times we can end up in situations in which things are necessary for different reasons, for someone who is sick or different, just as an example. And then we need to find out. So if it's the Oraita, it will be much more serious case, for example, of illness in order for us to permit. But if something is dirabanan and there's a need, then it's easier to find a way in order to make it permissible without doing the direct melacha. Well, we won't get into that now, but it's important that you remember that what I just said. That's very important in terms of Shabbat in general, of how we as rabbis, for example, are asked, can this and this, what can we do? We're in such a situation, what can be done? And then that is the basis for any discussion regarding allowing something on Shabbat because of necessity.
Okay. So I agree, and I say it almost every time I give a shiur. I bring the Doraita and the Rabbanan because it's always very relevant. So remember these words Doraita and the Rabbanan. They are crucial for halacha in every topic, and specifically here we'll see a few of the discussion. So the Gemara specifies. Rabbi Elazar said the dispute that they have here means only by hand. However, one is liable if he removed them with a utensil. Okay, so the debate, you can see the Mishnah started, one who removes his fingernail with another. Okay, so it's or with his teeth. So it's if he only did it in a way that he doesn't use utensils that are meant for this work. If it's a utensil, then it will be forbidden according to everyone. The Gemara asks about this. Of course, this is obvious because this is we learned, and it said from the Mishnah, with one another. So of course, so why do Rabbi Elazar need to say it? Of course, it will be forbidden. To find it here. So the Gemara gives an answer, lest you say the rabbis also exempt one removes his fingernails with a utensil. Maybe it will say about it also according to the rabbinic because one is not interested in the removed nail. He did not perform the prohibited labor of shearing. And that which was taught in the Mishnah with one another is intended to convey the far-reaching nature of Rabbi Eliezer statement. So the Rabbi Elazar here in the Talmud, when he wants to, the question is when he explains, can we? I don't want to use all the time to explain the malach of the Gemara. It's I leave it because it's too complicated to explain now. Yeah, I want to bring it as a source because this is a source that the halacha refers to. I won't go into explain the different the malach of the Gemara, but you can see here at least a very important distinguish between using a utensils and just doing it in a different way with your hands, with your finger, with the teeth, which is not according to the rabbis, according to Chachamim, is not is forbidden, but only from the rabbis and not from Doraita. Okay, I'll jump to Maimonides, to the Rambam that we mentioned before in Mishneh Torah, Ilchot Shabbat 8. He says as follow: a person who cuts his nails, his hair, his mustache, or his beard, the derivative of shearing and is liable, provided one cut them using a utensil. So exactly, you can see how he uses what he says in different words what the Gemara said. So it's only then you're liable if you use a utensil. If one removes them by hand, one is not liable. And the above applies regarding both one's own nails and the like, and those of a colleague. So both if you do it to someone else or if you do it to yourself. There's no difference. Sometimes it might be a difference. Similarly, a person who cuts a wart from his body is also relevant for us, whether using a utensil or by hand is not liable. The above applies regarding both one's own warts and those of a colleague. it is permitted to remove a wart in the temple by hand, but not with a utensil. If it is dry, one may cut it off with a utensil in order to take part in the temple service. That was how it used to be in the temple, and that's also why the rule apply. As we know, the melachot that were allowed in the temple are the one on Shabbat are the one that we are not that are forbidden. So the melachot of the mikdash are those who are forbidden for us. Yes. So, but again, the question is liable. Everyone agrees that it's not allowed, but liable means it's a decree from the Torah, and then you don't do that. This is a simple one, and this is usually won't be a big problem, but there's a more problem when you come to combing the hair. How much hair is it necessary for a person to remove with a utensil to be liable? 2 hairs, at least. So one is not. If one removes a gray hair from the dark ones, one is liable for removing even one. Because then it's very clear that you show that you want to do this. Like if you have, I'm exactly in the age. I remember a few years ago when I started to have gray hair, like only one. It looked very weird. So taking just the one out is something that just because it's now we have Baruch Hashem enough gray hairs, but in the beginning then you have one and it's like irritating in the eye. So taking one out is very clearly that you choose deliberately to do the prohibition, right? If you only take the one white, you show that you want to take it out, and it's not just like okay, it's something small that bothers. That's why everyone. A nail, Tavan will apply to a nail when the majority of it has been split, or to strips of flesh that have begun to peel. If they have split upward and annoy the person, and this is very important also, is the question here of annoying the person. This will be very relevant to all the rules. One may remove them by hand, but not with a utensil. If, however, one removes them with a utensil, one is not liable. Because they are already separated, so they're not. It's not doing something when it's already out. When it's already separated, then it's a different case. It's not allowed to do it with a utensil, but you're not liable. So it's not allowed from rabbi and the rabbi, not from the oraita. If they do not annoy the person, it is forbidden to remove them, even by hand. So you can see here suddenly a rule that you would think, why is it relevant if it annoys me or not? It's not only the question of the work. Suddenly the Rambam here, when you bring the question of tsar, something that annoys you, that will be a problem on Shabbat. So we might permit things in the reasoning of this is just will ruin the atmosphere of Shabbat, so you can permit things. And you can see a beautiful example. You can't, if it annoys you, then it's fine to remove by hand. If it do not annoy you, then it's forbidden to do it. It's not only a question of the deed you do; it's a question what will the effect of doing it or not doing it will have on your Shabbat. That's also relevant to the question if it's permitted. So you can see how the Rambam comes to something that might be forbidden from rabbinical, right? Because it already began to peel. So then the question, does the rule still apply, the original rule, if it started to peel? So there's a question, is it or not? So if you add a reason, because it annoys you, so if it's not clear if it's forbidden, and you add a reasoning of its annoying of tsar, then you permit it. And that's exactly why it's so crucial to understand is a law, the right of the Rabbanan. I can see you unmuted.
Yeah, it's similar to another case, the question of taking out a thorn on Shabbat, for example.
Yes.
right? Which is actually very common, right? If you're walking and you get a thorn in your hand, in your foot, and it's painful, then the same reasoning will be put forward. It's not only it's a question of annoying or painful, and it ruins your Shabbat. So we would allow even the use of a needle as long as you don't purposely take out blood. But you can even use a needle that we would never allow, right? It's kli shemelachto leisur. We would never allow the use of a needle, but you can even use a needle according to the Mishnah Berurah, that you can use in order to get the thorn out. So I think it's a similar phrasing there to what we have here. Like you were saying, it's something that is prohibited, but here it's allowed, and since it has right, and because the basis is that it's annoying or painful to you.
Yes. So, and now I'll come to the like the hard, the difficult questions, which is the long list of things in the Gemara that are the sources for it's a continuance of the same page that we that I showed before, and then there's like a list of different melachot that different actions and the reasoning of why they're forbidden. So a woman who applies eyeshadow, kochelet, that's the word, kochelet, like the color blue, because it's probably that's what they used to, who apply the eyeshadow, is liable due to dyeing. And who braids her hair and applies blush, she's liable due to building. That's not one of the things that he said. So boneh, that's also one of the avot melacha. So building. And is that is that the typical manner of building? Well, says yes, braiding one's hair is considered building. As Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe taught, and the Lord God built the side, a tetzela, when he built the woman, that he took from Adam into a woman, which teaches that the Holy One, blessed be he, braided Eve's hair. Look how beautiful and thoughtful he was. Braided Eve's hair and brought her to Adam. From where is it derived that this is the meaning of built? It is because in the islands of the sea, they call braiding building. Okay, so you can see that the use of the word building, as a verb to braid. So this is okay, so this is important regarding the different consequences. It was taught in the Baraita. Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar says, with regard to a woman who braids her hair and who applies eyeshadow or blush on Shabbat, if she did it for herself, she's exempt. This is what Moshe David mentioned before, if you do it to yourself or to someone else. If she did it for another, she's liable. Okay? There's a difference between someone who do the action to herself, then she can't do it in a perfect build manner. You don't build completely if you do it to yourself, but if someone is professional, like someone does it to another, then she can do the whole thing in a perfect manner, and in that sense, she is building. And so too, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar would say in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, a woman may not apply robe to her face on Shabbat because by doing so, she is dying, which is not, yes. So these are the sources of the discussion of the Talmud. Now it looks like, okay, that's very clear. Then it means everything is forbidden, and we can finish by there. It is more complicated than that. Oh, I forgot to translate this part. Rav Moshe David, say something, and it will take 2 seconds to bring the translation.
Okay. I think that just before Rav Yair continues, we already see in the Gemara itself the difference between doing it for yourself and for someone else is not only the question of intent, but it's the question of doing something complete. And that's where we sort of have an opening, because I think the basis of the Gemara is understanding that one wants to be beautiful on Shabbat. You want to go both Shabbat evening if you didn't have time to prepare yourself. You're living in the Nordic countries and you're rushing home and then you don't have time, but you want to go to the Beit Knesset respectfully. And also in the morning, you wake up, your hair is all messed up, and you don't want to go like that because you respect the Shabbat and you respect the shul, and you want to be beautiful on the Shabbat. So that's why there's an interest here to sort of find ways in which it could be you're not doing the melacha completely, either by doing it for yourself, as we already said, and I'm sure Rav Yair will also show us some other possibilities here, so that it's not just completely prohibited.
Yes.
It's also it's very interesting to see that many of the things or the questions we get today are not so different than 2000 years ago, when they're having the discussion of how do you beautify yourself for Shabbat. But I will say that in that case, the colors were very much pigments of actual color, and maybe a bit different than synthetic things that some are using today. That could also be a difference, but we won't get into that much
Yes.
detail.
Yes. So Shulchan Aruch is a simple source of Shulchan Aruch. Everyone remember the Shulchan Aruch, of course. Rabbi Yosef Karo. We did talk about 500 years ago. Shulchan Aruch en Rema. He stated the three different things. It is forbidden for a woman to apply sarak on her face. On Shabbat due to the prohibition against dyeing. For this reason, it is also prohibited for her to use kol, likhol. It's put the dye on her face on Shabbat, and for this reason, it is forbidden to apply a dough on her face, as it reddens the flesh when removed. So there was some kind of something that made a change of the color of the face. This is like the basics, and then the detail will come. It is forbidden for women to braid her hair on Shabbat, and it's not permissible to allow its braiding. However, she can part her hair. Okay, so there's something that is Haggah, not blood. Haggah. This is now Rema. Some prohibit parting one's hair, which means making a style. As mentioned by Rashi in the Rosh. Additionally, it has become customary to forbid doing this with a tool, but it is permitted to do so with one's fingers. So this is also even combing your hair, and this is. We'll come to the next one. It is forbidden to comb with a comb on Shabbat, even one made from pig hair, and it is impossible not to pull out some hair. However, it is permitted to run one's finger through the hair and to fluff it by hand. Okay, so we have here all the problems with some openings to understand. So the most important thing that comes here is you can see that the problem with combing is something that might pull some hair. But if you come with something else, maybe the best example is you can see when whoever had um, babies know that when you have a daughter, then the comb they make for babies is very, very soft, right? You could barely use it to yourself, but it's very soft because we don't want to hurt the baby because they won't understand that's the reason that they did it. And so you can see here that there's a difference between something that cannot not pull and maybe something that will be an opening that some do, that you have like kind of a Shabbat comb, is it like a Shabbat brush that will be that some will also not allow that, but will be an opening, because this is a question what would be. Okay, I want one part of the Mishnah Berurah here that comes in remarks, the Shulchan Aruch, I want to just bring the last part that comes here, which is also very, that's why I want to bring it. Nevertheless, even the act of passing by Sarak in the presence of a woman is only a rabbinic prohibition, as dyeing is not prohibited by Torah law on human skin. Okay, he brings here a detail that the original dyeing is not relevant to the question of human skin. And that's why the whole question of the thing will be from the Rabbanan. It's an important specifying according to the Mishnah Berurah here. Um, uh,
Be able just to add that it's not only a question of not doing like the oraita, but this is that because for women this is so important on the Shabbat, as we were saying. So there's a difference between permanent coloring and something which is not permanent, such as applying rather than coloring one's face, to apply a powder which has coloring on it, for example. And then there's different cosmetics that could be permitted. Rav Ovadia Yosef discusses them. What type of cosmetics are actual coloring and what not? Probably the women, which is why I say to my daughters to ask their mother, because I'm sure that the women here know much more what I'm talking about than me. But I
yes.
know from the halachic perspective that it's a question: are you actually doing a deep coloring? The basis is not, as you just said, Rav Yair, is not the oraita, it's the rabbanan, and then there's a specific need or wish, and then within that, if it's not permanent, both the braiding of the hair. In terms of bonnet, right? In terms of what you said, in terms of building, not in terms of combing and taking out the hairs, but you're not doing something permanent. You know, girls can change their hair every 5 minutes. So if it's not something permanent, in that case, or the coloring itself is not a basic coloring, which will be like a tanning, rather it's something which is not permanent, that is where we can end up in areas in which not only is it not deoraita, but could even be permitted on Shabbat.
Yes. And if I can also use your example of who do you ask, my biggest problem regarding this is the way I was raised. Because we were five boys in the family. My father they were four boys. So I have the second generation of not having girl, and my mother she had a non-Jewish mother. She converted as a child, and she had a non-Jewish mother. So she had nothing, and her father, of course, also didn't keep halacha, and he was married to a non-Jew. So she had nothing from home, and specifically also my mother, she never put like she didn't go up. She was very like Danish from the time that we shouldn't be try to be beautiful for others and like all the makeup and such. So she never put all of these things. So I didn't have any of that at home. I didn't know what it is. I didn't, and my mother always also covered her hair with mitpachat. So I don't have any tradition from home. I don't know what the practice is. I only know it from the books, and it is problematic because the practice is very different. I learned different things from my wife on what, also, for example, braiding the hair. That if you do it in a way that is like very big and general and don't like bind it, then it's not considered braiding. And like there are different solutions that I had no idea, and I didn't even know the terms when I started learning the Hilchot Shabbat. I had no idea what these things are, and it's very relevant and very maybe part of the difficult that I have. I do want to bring the others and the thing that he write here also in the Mishnah Berurah, which is again I think beautiful in principle. I don't want to bring all the debate. He comes and talks about how is it allowed to braid or not, and also discuss how would you do it if it's a shaitel, peruk, because yeah, then there's he comes in and says maybe it's also difficulties, but however, uh, it seems inappropriate to protest in places where they would not listen. So he comes and says he wants to be a bit more strict, but you shouldn't protest something in a place that they won't listen to you, because then you come into a problem. Like you shouldn't, even though you think it's not allowed, and you have your explanation why not. Don't go that way, because people will do, and then when you came and taught them it's not allowed on Shabbat, you actually then you make them go over the rules of Shabbat. So we have to be careful, the rabbis, saying things here when it's obvious no one will follow. Then you have to be extra cautious when it comes to yeah.
Yair, we know, I'm sorry. We know that everyone here will follow everything that you say
Of course, of
100%.
course,
The
of
problem
course.
is that then they go to the communities and they say, we learned this is a problem. And then the community, the people in the community are used to doing it and they won't listen.
Yes.
So maybe that's where the problem is. But I think it really goes down to what I've said already twice, that it's really important for people to be dressed properly, and it's part of. It's like what it's if someone is going to out to the theater, to a movie, or to some event, then of course you'll get dressed up properly, and you want to do the same for Shabbat, and that's where it's coming out of a good place, and therefore we don't want a conflict with it.
Yes. So I want to bring also because all the sources that I brought, except Mishnah Berurah, that it's 150, 200 years old, are very old. I want to come to some newer sources, and two of them that are very relevant. The Igot Moshe, Reb Moshe Feinstein. He was the greatest Ashkenazi posek of the 20th century, like the most central and important one. He lived in the States. And in his book, Yigrot Moshe, he writes. I couldn't find the place with the word. I could only find the picture of the of the book. So he said, and about the question if a woman is allowed to use lipstick. He says it is forbidden from two reasons. Misur memachek, both a question of, I don't know what's the word in English, memachek. What should David help me?
To erase or to
No,
wipe
memachek.
out.
Yeah. It's like
To
this is the main problem with also all the when you use to glide something, which is the problem that also a question of the toothpaste is also connected to this question of when you glide something in so you form it in a way. So this is one, and misur tzvi'ah, and dying. ואם הולך שליקה ממחק, if it's not a hard thing, but it's like more fluid, שליקה ממחק, that it's not, יש על כל פנים איסור צביעה, it's still forbidden from the ruling of dyeing, of coloring. And in the same principle, וכן אסור לאישה, a woman is not allowed to color her face from the rule of dyeing, but throwing some white powder on the face that is שלא מתקיים, it doesn't exist, like it goes off, well, it doesn't have אדם מתקיים. It's not fast. It's not
permanent.
yes, it's not permanent. But also lipstick is not permanent, but it's not permanent in the sense that it won't stick, it won't stay. Like after a while, it will disappear by itself. So it's not that's what's not permanent in that aspect. Then there's no it's not forbidden at all from dyeing.
I added the translation in the chat.
Where did you find it? Or you wrote it?
No, I found it. Go ahead.
Oh. Where did you find it? In Sefaria?
No.
Okay. You have your okay.
Yeah.
It's permitted for ChatGPT. Is it permitted for women to apply? This is a question that came to in Yechavedat, one of the most important. Rav Moshe David mentioned before, Rav Ovadia is one of the rabbis who wrote about the thing. Rav Ovadia was probably the most important posek in Israel for Sfaradim, but not only. Like he was so unique in his way of thinking, his explanation, and he was courageous. He had no problem saying things that other rabbis will say, how can you say that? He was like very went on halacha and Rav Ovadia Yosef read about him. He's was an amazing, amazing and special rabbi. He got the question: is it permitted for women to apply powder to the face on Shabbat, or is there a prohibition against dyeing on Shabbat? And in that tshuva, I didn't bring all of it. Therefore, it is permissible to apply powder, even colored, because Rav Moshe Feinstein didn't allow colored, only white, even colored, provided it is not mixed with ointment or cream. And then he referred to Rabbi Eliezer ben Natan, the Ravan, who ruled leniently in such cases to prevent women from being scorned by their husband, especially for women who are accustomed to doing so. In matter of scribes, we follow the lenient opinion, as explained in the tractate of Avodah Zarah. Additionally, the custom has spread to be lenient, and they allow it for Jewish people. V'anach lahem Israel. And I think so he comes and try to allow as much as he can. I would say that the ground rules here, when it's something that is not fast, it doesn't stay, it will go off itself, then he allows completely. Some will be more strict about it and will only say powder. And in general, you can see almost everyone who writes about it today is extremely careful because they know they don't want to something that is so much part of lots of women today and also in the past, and they don't want to frighten people, and so they try to talk to their heart, and you really like need to think and consider um, uh, what is so important for you that you need to find solutions to permit, and what is and what is not. Some will go here and say this is an opportunity to understand that this beauty is not. We sing in the entrance to Shabbat Sheker Chen Vehevel Yofi, the lie that lies in beauty, but others will go and say this is important for women. You can't just say but it's so.
It's actually it's very interesting that the men are scorning the women when the women are trying to keep halacha, right? In other words, aren't the men respecting the women for for trying to keep halacha even if they're less beautiful? But it's an interesting point. But also the fact that the shlom bayit comes in here. In other words, that if a woman is so stressed over the makeup and wants to be beautiful, but then really feels limited, and then all of that, and then you want to have peace and harmony in the home on Shabbat, and especially I think it's what we just a reflection on all of the different malachot that you've shown here, Rav Yair. It's Shabbat is a time when we might be dealing with our fingernails because we're noticing them, or it's a time in which we finally have time to get dressed properly, or want to go to and dress properly and put on makeup. And all of these limitations really create a lot of tension, which the rabbis here, especially the last ones, I think, are observing and want to create a better atmosphere, while keeping, of course, the halachot of Shabbat.
I'll let you continue because I have to really leave. I have a stone unveiling, a Gilui Matzeva, so I have to run immediately after the shiur, so you might continue. I do want to touch also the question that Moshe David mentioned of brushing the teeth. That is very important, and I will. Uh, I want to bring the so very. this question that, for example, if I go to in the page to Rav Moshe Feinstein that I brought before, he writes about Benakot Shinayim b'Shabbat v'Yom Tov, about cleaning your teeth in Shabbat and Yom Tov in toothpaste with toothpaste. It's simple that is forbidden because of memachek, because of this putting
Spreading,
thing,
I would say, like, yeah.
and without toothpaste, in a special brush that is meant for this, it's allowed because it's like cleaning the rest of the body part by part. Ashkenazi say it's not allowed to wash your whole body at once, but you're allowed to wash every part. And Sephardi can permit that. So it says, and now, but you're only allowed to wash it with with water. And the brush you shouldn't put with water not before because you might consider squeezing. משום סחיטה בשיער, and after cleaning, you shouldn't clean the brush because you don't need it today, you only need it tomorrow. I don't think I know anyone who will follow this in the way he says, and I also think that in these what you do have some people who decide not to use wash at all, brushes, toothbrush at all, and they use only mouthwash. It's also important that you don't threat people to go away from you. Here again, there are different opinions that are very lenient regarding that. For example, when you go to Rav Yosef, he even permits Rav Yosef even permit the toothpaste. Some would say you should use not paste, but you can use like the mouthwash on a toothbrush. There are discussions that I also mentioned before about bleeding. If someone bleeds, but here the majority of the rabbis were right today that only if it's guaranteed that you will bleed, if it's 100%, then you should be careful with that. But if it's not 100% guaranteed, then many of the rabbis do allow it. Debates in this question about there are special brushes that have very thick silicone like hairs instead of and in that sense the water in between them, there's no element of squeezing because they don't go in the parts. So there are special made for those who want to be very lenient. Then you can use this special silicone toothbrush. There are so many opinions. Rav Moshe David can continue because he is because I have to run. But I can say that this is a place that you can. There are a very big, wide, lots of opinions, which also mean that we as rabbi we need to be careful with saying clearly that one thing, because you open a book, for example, if you open here what Rav Steinsaltz writes about it in the book that we use, and he just says it's not allowed because he doesn't bring all the other opinions. He brings his opinion regarding this. And
I think that specifically in Israel, it's become more and more permitted over time because of Rav Ovadia, and that sort of becomes a norm. Because if you have people from within the yeshiva world, right, Sfaradim, who are saying it's permissible, and then you have intermarried, right, between them and others, I think over time it's become quite common within completely, fully, strict Orthodox homes that toothbrush would be allowed, but then maybe perhaps in diaspora communities less so because Rav Ovadia is less prominent there and Rav Moshe
but the
Feinstein is more
diaspora
prominent.
communities, many people won't didn't even start prohibiting. Like I'm not sure Yeah, maybe
because
in the
this was
Haredi or in the ultra-Orthodox world, that there would be and other didn't even look. I just want to show you the special Shabbat toothbrush that you can find. You can see here, like with the silicone hairs, and you can see how creative the halacha mind, Jewish mind, can be. I have to run, so Moshe David, you can finish the other thing. There are so many more details about that, but we I think got the principles and continue studying, and we'll have also a special shiur with response and questions of general topics, right, of Moshe David.
Yes, and I will also I'll let
So
you
thank you.
run.
Sorry for
Yeah,
I really have to run.
yeah, thank you so much. So I can stay with you for a couple more minutes. So following, if we do, um, I'll just continue the question regarding the toothbrush, as we were saying. So it really depends on the minhag. I think the question is, how important is it to you? Because if you can be okay with buying like like a liquid, and just washing your mouth with it, so that, of course, it's important. You want to have a pleasant smell. You're going to meet a lot of people on Shabbat. It's a time of socializing, so that's great. If you find it, going back to the word annoying that we spoke earlier in the shiur, that it's deeply distressing to you and that it's something that you need for your own hygiene, then we would look towards the leniency, not like Rav Moshe Feinstein in this case, but Rav Ovadia Yosef, in terms of, and I think throughout the shiur we have to discuss what the problem is, what the malacha is, and then what the need is. So we've seen that throughout this shiur. One thing that Rav Yair mentioned very quickly, I'm just going to run through a few subjects, a few topics that were not covered properly. The question of showering on Shabbat itself. So if we talk about the melachot, so we have a few problems. Always we say, okay, where is the melacha and what is the problem itself? First of all, covering oneself completely in water on Shabbat, for example, swimming is a problem itself. The basic melacha is that of squeezing. In other words, if you're swimming and then you end up squeezing your swimming trunks, for example. So that could be one problem, or squeezing one here, which is quite common. In other words, you come out and then you're going to squeeze your hair because your hair is wet. So even if you're not going to do it, the fact that can lead to it would lead to it be prohibiting to shower one's hair on Shabbat. Another melacha that we can have is the question of the hot water. The hot water itself is a problem of bishul, of cooking, and also the fact that if you have boiling water and it's mixing with the cold water in order for you to be showering with warm water, then you are basically cooking the cold water by doing that. In terms of and then we have the other melachot that we just discussed about toothpaste, which could be similar with shampoo and soap, especially a bar of soap. It could be more problematic. So basically, shower before Shabbat is the answer. But if one ends up, let's say you got really dirty, or you have a young child, who needs to shower in the morning. So as Rav Yair mentioned, you can shower, but ivar, you do it limb by limb and not with boiling water. Boiling water would be problematic in itself, because, like I said, you're mixing the cold and the warm. In some cases, and it's something to think about, you're actually turning on a system by turning on the hot water in itself, which in itself could be connected to gas, could be connected to electricity. I know many of the Nordic countries, you have warm water that is just provided, so it's not you're warming up anything yourself. But in other cases, you could be really turning on something by turning on the hot water itself. So you could wash yourself limb by limb, so to say, and with if you're not turning on the hot water in order to do so. And then the question of, you go back to the question of the hair and braiding one's hair and squeezing the water out of one's hair, etc. One other thing that I wanted to touch upon is washing dishes very quickly. But let me just see the questions here. So if we have plaster on the thorn afterwards, it is then allowed in such a case. Yeah, I don't see. Okay, if you have a plaster, then don't tear the plaster, right? You usually have a way to open it without tearing. So just open it, right, carefully, and then you can use it to put it on. Any type of tearing and destroying in itself is that tearing motion itself is problematic, just even with the paper, and that's where the problem would be. Another thing to be careful of could be the lettering. If you have on a wrapper in general on Shabbat, right? So if you're tearing anything that has letters and then you're destroying the letters or the wording there, that can also be. An interesting question is, what about icing on a cake? Happy birthday, 76. I didn't mean any of us here. Then that would be allowed. It's a part of the food. Or what about decorating and making letters with the decoration? So it's not permanent, and it's also part of the food itself. So there will be those who will allow that as well, and some others will say that should be done before Shabbat, but cutting the cake itself would be allowed on Shabbat itself. The question of food coloring as well. Right? Are you dyeing food on Shabbat? That could be also problematic. But in general, things that have to do with food that you're going to be eating could be allowed. But if it's not intentional, okay, you want to make a Thousand Island dressing and you're taking ketchup and putting it with mayonnaise and then it's coloring, but you're not intending to color it, you want it to have a specific taste, then that would be okay. I'm just shooting like through my mind here, like, and just throwing things out to you. I hope that's okay. Regarding regarding the question again of lipstick and the powdering and all of that, I think it's good to ask the Rebbitzin in your community. I go back to my own wife as a good answer because again, it depends on the minhag of the place and what is allowed and what is because on the other hand, let's say your rabbi said it's okay, but then none of the women are doing it, and then they might be telling you it's not okay. So you don't want to be in that situation either, even though you're doing something which is okay. So it really is important because we saw how careful the rabbis were. We don't want to push people to say something is prohibited when it's the norm. And on the other hand, if we are saying it's allowed, but then everyone else is not doing it because they don't, that it's not allowed, then that's not good either. So I don't want to go into more details on that. I'm just going through the questions here regarding the topic of the body is allowed to have sex on Shabbat. I've heard different opinions. Okay, I don't know of any opinions here. Intimate relations are very important, and love and the time that Shabbat allows for us to be relaxed and to be in a place of, as we say, lecha dodi lekrat kala, let the beloved one go towards the woman. So it's actually a special time for intimate relations. We can have a special shiur on that. It's very and how we relate to intimate relations and many questions that could arise regarding that. So I can add that as a special shiur, which I think is important in terms in general. But Shabbat is, especially Friday night, is considered a special time for intimate relations. But of course, that doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean anything forceful about it. It means that if you relax and have that time and have that focus and can be there for each other, then that is very special time on Shabbat. Okay, so I wanted to cover because next week we're going to already be going into electricity. So I just want to touch upon something which is very relevant, which is washing dishes on Shabbat. I assume that many of us wash many dishes on Shabbat. It just happens to be that we have a lot of dishes, right, and big meals. So if we think about go back to the same framework, what are the problems for washing dishes on Shabbat? So the cleaning itself is not a problem because you're doing that because you need your clean dishes, right, on Shabbat, and you don't want to have a filthy, right, kitchen on Shabbat. Regarding the sponges, that goes back to everything we've talked about this Shabbat, this Shiur, sorry. The sponges itself are very much built in order to contain water, and then you're basically the motion that you're doing is taking the water, filling it with soap, and then using that. So that in itself is problematic. You should get a type of sponge, right, that doesn't contain the water inside, that you're not squeezing in order to clean with. And that is your intention, to clean the dishes with it. You can have, there are different types that you can find, even in the regular supermarket. You could find online Shabbat sponges, but I don't think you need to. I think you could just find something that doesn't contain the water that you're squeezing in order to do that. The warm water goes back to the same question that we were discussing before. The warm water, if it's at a boiling level, then it's mixing with the cold and could be bishul, could be cooking. But if it's not at that level, then it really depends if by turning on the hot water, you're turning on a system or not. So that really depends on the home. Another thing that I would say is washing dishes is in order to you need the dishes for tomorrow, or you need to have a clean kitchen. But let's say you were at home and you're going out for the rest of the Shabbat and you're coming back after Shabbat is over, then it could be a problem because you're actually washing for after Shabbat. You're not washing for the Shabbat itself. Understand what I mean? In other words, if you want to have something, we don't do preparation for after the Shabbat. So if I'm cleaning the dishes in order to have a clean kitchen for when I come home after the Shabbat is over, I think that's problematic. But if I'm doing it now, another question could be, okay, let's say I have a meat meal in the evening and a milchig, right, a dairy one in the morning. So do I need to really wash the meat dishes if I'm going to only be using dairy the next day? I think it really depends on how you feel. If you are going to be annoyed, going back to that word, that Shabbat itself, you have all of these dirty dishes and don't want to have them, then you can clean them. But if that's not the case and you're just cleaning it because but you don't need those utensils, then that could be hachana, that's preparation, and we don't prepare. The same with everything having to do with cleaning. Of course, you can clean, we have the same thing with, same questions regarding cleaning the floors. I think Rav Shmuel touched upon that a bit. But even, the basic question is, am I cleaning now because I want the house to be clean now for Shabbat and I really need it because the house is dirty? That's where the basic question will come in before I discuss the details of what is and what is not allowed. Anything else? I just went out on a shooting range and shot out at you. I hope that's went through doom doom doom, but I hope it's okay. Any other questions here? I mean, as Rav Jair said, we tried to cover here, and I think it's very good that we saw the Gemara today so that you can understand how the thinking process goes behind it and understanding. And of course, there's many, many details that you can continue to learn yourselves. And we do have as I mentioned before, in the Sefaria, you have Pninei Halacha, which is a modern day text from a rabbi of Melamed. So you can he will go into a lot of the details themselves, but always go back and refer to what the rabbis have taught you here. Any other questions? You're all in shock. Okay, sorry. Okay, now I see you smiling, so that's good. Okay, then Shavua Tov to everyone. Hope you have a wonderful, blessed week, and Bezrat Hashem, we'll see each other on Wednesday as well.
Thank you for today. Have a
Thank
good
you.
week.
Shabbat tov.
Bye.
Shavua Tov, everyone.
Shabbat tov.